It was just supposed to be a fun night out, adults only.
What's the overall view of this young mom who suddenly goes missing?
People liked Karen, they liked being around her.
Tonight, the shocking trial and the ex-wife you'll only see on 2020.
This is a man I was married to that I shouldn't have been afraid of.
But what about his first wife?
My mom was going out more, which made me start to question why.
When they found Karen's vehicle, it had a badly damaged flat tire.
It appears that this screw was mainly inserted into the tire.
It was literally screwed into the tire. So this is where you found the smashed cell phones?
In this area here.
Not one, but two smashed phones.
I thought maybe somebody saw her walking and grabbed her.
She doesn't hold back. I can see Karen going over there and letting him have it.
This case is wild, to put it mildly. It's wild because the circumstances are just so unique.
Karen Swift's Halloween costume was a very sexy black costume.
Black skirt, black tights, black shoes, and she had a black, kind of a Mardi Gras type mask that she was wearing.
I think she was supposed to be a cat. She had a skirt on. It was very form-fitting.
So it was va-va-voom.
It was.
What began as an innocent night of Halloween partying was just the beginning of a tragic story that would engulf not only Karen Swift, but her whole family and almost everyone in this close-knit community.
There was going to be a costume party on October 29th of 2011. It was held at a place that here in Dyersburg it's called The Farms. It's a country club that's attached to the golf course.
Dyersburg, Tennessee is just a small hamlet in western Tennessee. It's not far from the Mississippi River.
Dyersburg is a small, very closely knit town. Everybody pretty much knows everybody.
I think the majority of the population still has that old Southern hospitality, kind of greet everybody, wave. If you know somebody when you're driving down the road, you wave to them.
There's only 38,000 people here. Most people have grown up here, lived here their whole lives.
And I think that you take the word of mouth and you add the social media aspect to it now, and everyone is almost always in everyone else's business.
44-year-old Karen Swift marries husband David in 1989. Originally from Arkansas, they moved to Dyersburg, Tennessee with their family about 2 decades later in 2008.
When I first moved to Tennessee, I really liked it. I enjoyed it. It was very peaceful, and getting to know all my new friends and, meet new people was fun.
They didn't know anyone in Dyer County, and they made the move here, apparently for the schools. There are some good schools in this area.
Together, David and Karen Swift had 4 kids, 2 boys and 2 younger girls, including their daughter Ashley.
Growing up, my mom was very involved. She loved taking us to sports, dance, cheer. She just had that very caring and nurturing personality.
She was just a wonderful mother. She would do anything for her children. They were number one in her life. They came before anything else.
Karen was always kind of a fun-loving, bubbly type personality. Tried to, even when things were not going particularly well, tried to keep a positive attitude.
Her friends really liked her, and she had a lot of friends. So she was someone who was beautiful, someone who appeared to be happy with her life, and things appeared to be going very well for her.
Karen was outgoing, gregarious. She made friends very easily. People liked Karen. They liked being around her.
And on this cool, clear October night, Karen was headed out with her friends, while her daughter Ashley, who was 9 at the time, was heading to a sleepover at her friend's house.
I remember I was staying at a friend's house, and my mom was going to a Halloween party with some of her friends, and my dad was going to stay home with my sister.
Karen Swift went to the Halloween party with Bill Bona and Kathy Bona.
The party was hosted by 15 to 20 different couples. The women kind of did all the decorations, put everything together. The guys just kind of showed up.
And it was just supposed to be a fun night out. Adults only, dress up, have fun in a costume, and just socialize with one another. Karen arrived at the Halloween party probably around 8 or a little after 8 p.m.
That night, Karen was in a pretty good mood. I mean, she was able to go out on the dance floor and talk to different people. People were drinking, having a good time. Music was playing. People were out dancing. Karen was walking around, talking to several people. I remember seeing her on the dance floor at least one time.
And she left with Bill and Kathy Bona probably around midnight that night. And they went to McDonald's to get some French fries.
So they went through the McDonald's drive-thru and then went home to Kathy and Bill Bona's house.
While they're at Bill and Kathy's house, she gets a call from her daughter, Ashley.
When we were starting to go to bed, I decided that I wanted to go home. I called my mom and asked her to come get me.
Karen immediately told Kathy, I've got to go, my baby's sick, I'm going to go pick her up. So she did. She left, she went and picked up her daughter at a friend's house and then went home.
By now, of course, it's around 1:30 in the morning, the next day, October 30th. On her way home, Karen texts her husband, David, to let him know she's heading back to their house.
When she told him about going to pick up Ashley, he sent her a text response about the garage door is closed, come in the side door.
And then they arrived back at the Swift home around 2 a.m. that morning.
Karen goes to sleep downstairs while her husband David is sleeping in a different bedroom upstairs.
David did not get up until the next morning around 10 or 10:30 when the girls woke him up.
It's now that the Swift family's entire world turns upside down.
The next morning, Karen was not at home. The girls were the first ones, according to David, to tell him that their mother was missing.
Remember, Karen and Ashley had returned home around 2 in the morning and went to sleep. But now it seems that sometime after that, Karen had somehow disappeared.
Between the time of probably 10 and 11 o'clock, Kathy Bona, her friend, had been trying to call her. David Swift, her husband, had been trying to call her. And so now people are starting to get seriously worried that something's happened to her.
After Bill and Kathy Bona didn't get a response from her, they kind of said, well, something's not right. So they called David and asked him, where is Karen? And then they called the sheriff's office and said that she was missing.
Shortly after that, David made a phone call to the sheriff's department and reported that his wife was missing.
Karen's disappearance quickly became a mystery, and it would begin with the discovery of her abandoned car, a key piece of evidence that transforms this from a missing persons case into something far more sinister. So she shows up missing.
There was a lot of different theories about what was going on. There were many clouds of suspicion. This beautiful blonde-headed lady, mother of 4, comes up missing after a Halloween party. Everybody was talking about it.
The morning of Karen's disappearance, her car is discovered less than a half-mile away from her home.
At the corner of Millsfield Highway and Harness in Dyer County is where the broken-down SUV of 44-year-old Karen Swift was found.
I saw the car sit there for a day or so.
Karen's gone, and that's what's important, and we just want her to come back.
You could walk to it. It wasn't that far away on the highway, and it was there with a flat tire. So that's a clue. Her car's there.
Karen's vehicle was on the side of the road on Millsfield Highway right next to Harness Road. That's the road that Karen had lived on. Karen was not there.
It was in a normal state. It was parked on the side of the road. It had a flat tire to the right side. The investigation revealed that it was a screw in the tire
Why would her car be up there? If she had come home, there was no one who said Karen walked home from up on the highway, so it would appear that Karen had left. But it wasn't very far for her to suddenly get a flat tire either.
Investigators believe that the tire had been manually deflated and that the screw had been intentionally inserted into the tire. Which begs the question, did somebody put it there on purpose to leave Karen stranded?
When we observed the car, we noticed a screw in the tire. If you look at this very closely, it appears that this screw was manually inserted into the tire.
It was literally screwed into the tire.
Literally screwed into the tire. And my theory was right once we sent it off for forensic analysis. It was manually placed in that tire.
And I wanted you to look at, show me this screw. This is one that you actually ran over.
This is a screw I actually ran over in my patrol unit that went all the way up in the tire. And you can see where it was on the road.
Yeah. A lot of friction.
A lot of friction. This screw has no friction.
The lack of friction making investigators believe the screw hadn't been driven on. But how could that be?
They had not been in Dyer County that long because they had moved there. Karen's from Pocahontas, Arkansas, which is about 2 hours from Dyersburg. And it was about 4 years later that she disappeared.
The Swifts seemed to have a great life in Pocahontas. They were young and in love and devoted parents, as their friend Holly Sutton tells us.
We met through just public school and ended up being fast friends. They were excellent parents. They had rules. They were fairly strict. They did everything with their children.
We moved ultimately for my dad's job to Tennessee. It was just a better opportunity. I enjoyed it. It was very peaceful. I do think she was happy. I think that she wasn't necessarily fully herself in Tennessee.
Karen wasn't acting like herself, and turns out there was a reason for it. Strains on their marriage, David's new job as a manager at a manufacturing plant, and Karen's apparent change in lifestyle in Dyersburg worried those closest to her.
She had just mentioned to me that it was very different. She just said that, she says, I don't know that you would like it here. But she did say that she was meeting people and getting out.
I was used to her tucking me into bed every night or being home every night, getting up with her and going to the gym, and that kind of slowly stopped the longer that we lived in Tennessee.
That was not their lifestyle in Pocahontas. They didn't even social drink. We didn't need that. It was hard to hear because that was not them.
As soon as she went missing, it was Chief McCright's supposition that David, at the very least, had something to do with it.
And we finally just decided that, hey, he's going to be the only person that can really help us in this case to tell us about where his wife might have gone.
If you have a seat for me right over there.
He came in and gave my guys an interview. That interview didn't go very well, we didn't think.
And I said, so are you going to a costume party, or what are you doing? Are you all having a party? And she said, no, I'm just going to Kathy's. I said, well, okay.
He really wasn't concerned to me about where she might have gone.
Okay, was there any kind of argument or anything then?
No, I just, it was very brief. I wanted to make sure that Ashley was okay and that she was okay, because I questioned Karen about driving and getting her. I said, you know, if you can't drive, I will get Ashley. And that was all the conversation was.
Okay. How close did you get to her? Could you tell whether she'd been drinking or not?
Oh, yeah, you could tell. I could always smell she was drinking, you know.
He was saying, like, you know, that she drank and she was pretty much an alcoholic.
We're both drunk and been drinking, and she was so drunk once that she was had passed out. He was just so drunk that Sharon was drinking so much that.
So that was just, you know, I should, as a husband, be concerned about where is my wife.
If you had to use an estimated guess right now, where do you think she is?
I don't know. I'm so worried about her.
I would say my dad's reaction was, he was obviously very worried, but you have to think I was 9 and my sister was 5, so I think he was trying to put on a very brave face for us.
As the search for Karen Swift continues, investigators are reminded of a horrible incident Karen had with a neighbor just months before.
There was an issue where John Hogshooter had poisoned a couple of dogs in the neighborhood. One of the dogs belonged to David and Karen Swift.
Anybody who has a dog and they say their neighbor poisoned their dog, that would certainly be bad blood.
She doesn't hold back. If she feels that she's got something to say, she's going to say it.
A suspect emerges for investigators. As the search for Karen Swift continues, investigators cast a wide net for suspects and leads.
There was a man that she had met at a concert about 20 miles from Dyersburg across the Mississippi River.
It never grew into a full romantic relationship. It was more of an acquaintance. I think they talked on the phone a few times, maybe sent text messages back a few times, but it never developed any further than that.
His last text to Karen was, she told him that she was at the Halloween party, hanging out with some friends. And his last text was something essentially, great, text me sometime, I'd love to take you out to dinner. And we quickly concluded that, you know, obviously it didn't sound like somebody who was obsessed, and he was ruled out as a suspect.
Found out where he was at the time of her disappearance, and that alibi checked out.
But investigators have another possible lead to follow as they learn of a terrible conflict between Karen Swift and one of her neighbors.
John Hogshooter lived across the road, diagonal from their residence.
Catty-cornered, probably not more than 150 feet from their home.
Mr. Hogshooter had previously had a criminal matter charged against him regarding some sort of issue with one of their dogs.
He had gained some notoriety in the neighborhood. He's kind of a rough around the edges fella, generally.
There was an issue where John Hogshooter had poisoned a couple of dogs in the neighborhood, and one of the dogs belonged to David and Karen Swift.
He put some poison, some sort of poison concoction out on his property. One of the Swift's dogs got into the poison and was also sickened. The Swift's dogs did not die.
On October 7th, Karen actually went to this man's house to confront him about her dog being poisoned. John was eventually charged with animal cruelty in that case, and he actually pleaded guilty.
While one neighborhood dog did die from the poisoning, the Swift dog managed to survive after being rushed to the vet and having its stomach pumped, the incident creating bad blood between the neighbors.
Anybody owns a dog and they say their neighbor poisoned their dog, that would certainly be bad blood.
I know Karen and the Hogshooter guy, I knew of the fight they'd had.
She doesn't hold back. She doesn't hold back. Like, if she feels that she's got something to say, she's going to say it.
When she was missing, he became one of the first suspects that the sheriff's department looked at.
Investigators want to talk to John Hogshooter. He'd been poisoning neighborhood dogs, including Karen's. They bring him into this interrogation room, and they have some questions to ask.
John, what I want to talk to you about, I'm going to just shoot straight from the hip. Are you aware of what's going on out there where you live?
Yeah, I'm well aware of what's going on out there.
What I'm trying to do is clear people. And I know that the incident that happened with the dogs out there, I know all, about that because of the prior investigator that had been working that case. What I'm trying to do is find out your whereabouts on the 30th from that Saturday.
We interviewed John and asked him that he, of course, we interviewed about the dogs, but we wanted to know, did he know Karen?
His memories of Karen Swift differs from what others have said about the tension between the two of them.
What we want to do is make sure you had no involvement in Karen's disappearance.
I don't know. The only way I even seen a picture of this lady is my wife showed me a picture of her. I was like, oh, is that what she looks like? The only other time I've ever seen her is out mowing her grass in the summertime from my house.
Had he ever had any contact with Karen? Had he spoken with her? What kind of involvement had he ever had with Karen or David or anybody else in that neighborhood?
go up there and talk to him and sit out on the porch. From that area, from my house or his house, is the only time I've ever seen that lady. Out there mowing the yard. She's in a bikini, what do you think? You know, everybody's going to be, like,
Right, I understand.
we're men, you know.
You're a man, you're going to look at her, ain't you?
Yeah, but, you know, just like, yeah, she's in a bikini up there, you know, and that's it. And that's the only time I've ever seen her.
And he said no, he just saw her at one time out in the yard, and, you know, like a neighbor waved or something to the nature of that.
When did you find out that this woman was missing? When did you know about it?
I would say probably somewhere in the middle of the week.
This past week?
Yeah, or whenever she came up missing, probably in the middle of the week.
Somebody tell you, or you see it on the news, or?
How did I find out? Maybe it might. Well, I don't have TV, so I don't watch TV, so I don't know how I found out. My wife may have told me, or I don't remember. I think because I honestly don't know.
As soon as they started talking to him, he was extremely cooperative.
Where is my truck?
It's locked up and impounded in an enclosed building.
They impounded his vehicle. They got a search warrant, searched his house.
What I'm trying to say, if we want to look at your house, I'd rather for you not to go home before we got there. That's what I'm saying.
Well, my clothes and stuff, I wash my clothes over at my daughter's house, so all my clothes, I'll probably go over there and take a shower and get my clothes for sure. I can't even get in because my keys in the truck. There's a gold key in where the ashtray thing goes right there. There's a gold key. That's the only way I can get in and get my clothes to.
Okay.
He's very relaxed. He wasn't tense about it. It was obvious that, I mean, he wasn't nervous. I thought it was a good interview.
There was no evidence in the end that pointed that John Hogshuter had any knowledge of this at all.
But then investigators find Karen Swift's 2 cell phones, almost totally destroyed, near the property of John Hogshuter.
Finding these 2 phones very close to John's property was very concerning for the police.
When we discovered the phones, they were damaged. They were crushed. Somebody might have stomped them and then pitched them there.
They know she's missing. Her phone was not in her car. They didn't see it around the car, so they start searching for the phone.
So we decided we were going to do a grid from where her car was found back to the house.
So this is where you found the smashed cell phones?
In this area here, the phones were found.
Yeah.
They found 580-something feet from their driveway, from Karen's driveway to this location.
A highway patrolman comes across not 1, but 2 smashed phones.
This is images of them, right? They were shattered.
That phone was shattered before it even went there, because if you had thrown it in that grass, you would never got this damage to this phone.
But as close to the Swifts' home as the phones are, they're also very close to John Hogshuter's home. That neighbor, the Swifts say they had a confrontation with.
Finding those 2 phones within proximity of John Hogshuter's house raises many, many questions for investigators in this case, for obvious reasons.
Investigators found out that Hogshuter was at this church event.
We knew where he was on her day of disappearance, and we were able to establish his alibi.
There was no evidence in the end that pointed that John Hogshuter had any knowledge of this at all.
A thorough investigation was done, and he had alibi witnesses, and we were able to pretty quickly eliminate him as a suspect.
With Hogshuter cleared, the investigation continues. At this point, the most important unanswered question, where is Karen?
Some people just walk away from their lives. It happens all the time. Without a body, they don't know that a crime's been committed.
We constantly relied on getting them to the media. Of course, the sheriff would make press releases, social media. Everybody knew that we were trying to locate her.
There's a landmark in Dyer County, and it's a large cross where you can see it from a good distance. And Near that, within a few hundred feet, is a cemetery.
Bledsoe Cemetery is very spread out. Some of the headstones there are over 100 years old and even older. It's a very rural area. A local pastor and a congregant were in Bledsoe Cemetery on December 10th examining overturned headstones. And as they're surveying this type of damage, they notice a human body part coming out of some kudzu bushes.
Karen Swift has been missing for 6 weeks at this point. The police arrive and head to this nearby area full of kudzu.
Kudzu, they're vines, and kudzu can cover everything. It can cover very large trees and hang down. Kudzu can cover everything that it crawls across, and it crawls across almost everything.
And this is the kudzu that was...
This is the kudzu area. And all of this was in kudzu. Every bit of this was in kudzu.
So it was hiding everything here?
Yes, and the body was found somewhere in this area, maybe near that tree stump.
The body was so badly decomposed, it was hard to tell how long it had been there. One thing was very clear, though. There was almost no way that this person just wandered off and somehow found themselves underneath these bushes and then somehow died.
They certainly have an indication that it's a female, but they're not positive that it's Karen Swift.
The body was found with just undergarments on.
Yes.
What does that tell you?
Well, it lets me know that she did not leave the house dressed like that.
The body is sent to the medical examiner, and dental records make the identification official. It is indeed Karen Swift.
We went to the home to make the death notification. And we told David that we had found Karen. And his very words were, "You found it." You know, and we all, like, "We found your wife, Karen. You found it."
I don't have any audio or statement that backs that up, but I don't know that that statement proves anything. I know that the officer was trying to make something of that, but it's, in my opinion, not an admission or anything other than you found it.
The 44-year-old's body was found near Bledsoe Cemetery, just 2 miles from her Dyer County home. Police identified Swift's body Sunday using dental records. They're not saying how she was murdered. No suspects have been named.
Maybe it was just my dad who sat me down and told me that they found my mom, but I remember my dad being kind of very calm. He explained it in a way of mom's not coming back home and this is a new reality. And I think that he was trying to say it in the best way possible, but there's not really a best way possible to say that.
It was one of those days where you just go numb and you just cannot believe that this is what it came to. And why?
I was very upset when her body was found because of the kids and also David. And he was wondering what in the world could have happened.
I thought maybe, maybe somebody saw her walking and, grabbed her or things like that. But the more I thought about it, I thought there had to be a little bit more to it.
The autopsy revealed that the cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head. One thing that we were not able to tell was whether there was strangulation involved.
Investigators may not be certain how, but they are now convinced Karen Swift was murdered. As they try to figure out who did it, what did they find under a spare tire? As investigators in Dyersburg look into what is now a murder case, they learn some messy details about Karen and David Swift's marriage. Remember, they had moved here to Tennessee from Pocahontas, Arkansas.
Karen and David met in Pocahontas. They got married in 1989. Karen and David had what could be best described as a tumultuous marriage.
I know that maybe there was some affairs going on in Arkansas.
He ended up having a marital affair with this lady, and a child was born as a result of that affair. And they divorced at that time.
For a lot of couples, that might have been the end. But David and Karen are able to reconcile. They're divorced for only about 7 months when they remarry in 2000 and continue raising their 2 sons together.
And so then David and Karen go on and have their daughters Ashley and Keely. Now, sometime in the mid-2000s, Karen has an affair. David finds out. He forgives her for this. They reportedly move on.
He decided to quickly move the family to Dyersburg.
So it's David and Karen living in the new house with 3 of their 4 younger children. The oldest son was now in college.
He felt like if they didn't get away from the problem that we're having in Arkansas, their marriage would never work. And it did, you know. I mean, they had a loan for quite some time, and then things went from bad to worse.
That's because once the couple moves from Arkansas to Tennessee, more problems spring up. Karen makes new friends, and David and Karen have very different views about what happened next.
It didn't seem like David was happy with those friends, and they weren't especially happy with David either.
It was clear that once she started this friendship with these new friends, that she was moving away from David.
It was midnight. I heard her sneaking out of the house.
He talked about it in that police interview.
You know, I've seen nights that she would speed down the drive and Ashley's chasing after her and stuff, not wanting her to leave and go out at night.
It did get to a point where I feel like there was a little bit of shift in my family, and my mom was going out more, which made me start to question why.
As investigators learned details about what was going on, questions are raised about the nature of David's behavior towards Karen and if his alleged behavior crossed a line.
When David got upset is when Karen would be absent from the house.
He wanted to know where she was.
He would wake up, she would be gone, and he would get out to see where she was at.
David might be following her, but to him, it made perfect sense. He told people he had reason to worry about her and their kids. And his attorney says he thought she might be cheating on him.
If it's late at night and your kids are in bed and you're home after a work day, you know, you might understand why somebody would say, hey, what's going on? Or can I ask you some questions?
I think David just wanted his wife to be at home where she should be, with him and the kids. She claimed it was controlling. I don't think so.
But Karen let it be known she had had enough. She wanted another divorce.
Karen wanted to file for divorce because she felt David was too controlling of her.
Frankly, if we had to go to court, the inappropriate marital conduct would have been what I would refer to as kind of a stalkish behavior.
But Karen doesn't have enough money of her own to file for divorce, so her good friends, Bill and Kathy Bona, loan her the cash. Not only that, the Bonas say they gave Karen a second phone to use to get around her husband, to talk to her divorce lawyer.
Karen told me that she had a secondary phone, that the number that she was talking to me on was a secondary phone, and she did not want him to know that she was calling and talking to me about a potential divorce.
Investigators understand why they found those 2 smashed and discarded phones.
She was afraid to be present when he was served. It was a substantial amount of money that she was asking for, so I think that had a big impact on David when he received that.
And in the meantime, the couple continues to live together in the same house.
She was living downstairs, and David was sleeping upstairs.
I didn't notice anything different, you know. We all went about our business.
She chose to live in the home. And my take on it was that she wasn't afraid of him. She didn't ask for order of protection because there had been no issues of physical violence.
David continued to say things to Karen wanting to call the divorce off.
He wasn't happy about the divorce.
To prosecutors, the possible divorce and the issues in the marriage are reaching a boiling point.
I believe that he had the attitude they had reconciled before or had problems before, and perhaps they could just talk through it and continue on with their life.
And he said she wasn't having it. He said there was just no way.
Was it enough of a motive for murder? Investigators had some evidence, including those smashed cell phones found here. And there were those divorce papers that David seemed to have hidden under the spare tire in his car.
This here is not adding up, because if I'm getting a divorce, why do I need to hide them in a car, in the trunk, under a spare tire?
I don't have an explanation if he had just stuck them there or if he had inadvertently set them there.
It was only 20 days after she filed for divorce that Karen went missing.
To investigators, it's a lot of smoke. But the truth is, there is simply no hard evidence linking David Swift to the crime. And the district attorney general in office at the time is not willing to charge him.
I think he was concerned that you only get one chance to try the case.
For more than a decade, the town wonders, is there a killer walking free? Then, in 2022, finally, an arrest. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. And I got a chance to talk to that man from behind bars. Did you ever feel like you had a cloud of suspicion over you? Am I talking with the killer? And another woman emerges with a harrowing account. How would what she says affect the Karen Swift case?
The night that Karen was last seen, she went to a Halloween party.
I mean, the body was here for a month.
Undetected.
They investigated and they investigated, and everyone was like, when are you going to find a suspect?
The story of the same man, but two different women. One of them killed, one of them claiming she was stalked.
And there he was, in my backyard, in the middle of the night. This is too much.
The exclusive interview you'll only see on 2020.
They told me that my dad got arrested, and in that moment I was like, for what?
How big a deal was this trial in Dyersburg?
This trial was huge.
They didn't compare the fingerprints. They had tunnel vision.
I'm sorry.
It's all right.
This is a man I was married to that I shouldn't have been afraid of. And why is this happening?
Today we've intensified our search. We have combed through the areas again.
Karen Swift is a 44-year-old housewife, mother of 4, in Dyersburg, Tennessee, and she disappears in October 2011. Her car turns up not far from her house.
Car was locked, secure. There was no signs of foul play in the vehicle.
It was puzzling. I really didn't know. I didn't know what to think.
So after Karen goes missing, the police talk to her husband, David.
No, I just ordered to come home.
And they learn that there are serious problems in the Swift marriage.
Well, have you filed for divorce?
She filed on the 5th.
6 weeks after she disappears.
The body was found somewhere in this area, maybe near that tree stump.
Karen Swift has been found. Police identified Swift's body using dental records.
For the Dyer County Sheriff's Office, this case turns into a murder investigation. But they don't have enough evidence against Karen Swift's husband, David, or anyone else for that matter, to make an arrest. For more than a decade, there seems to be a question that lingers in the air in this town. Will Karen Swift ever get justice?
When it didn't happen right away, it almost felt like that there was nobody trying.
Somebody did this, so who? I'm 100% sure David did not do this.
And we kept working this case. We never gave up on it. And there was always little bits and pieces that we could piece and put together.
David, anytime law enforcement or the DA's office reached out to him, he answered their questions. He cooperated because he wanted to find out what happened to his wife.
They investigated and they investigated, and everyone was like, when are you going to find a suspect? When are you going to charge someone?
So for 10 years, 11 years, it was the hot topic in town.
It became an election year issue about no swift justice.
And a lot of people were upset about Karen's case not being solved.
It was always the number one thing that came up.
And in 2018, promising to look at the case again, Danny Goodman is elected as the new District Attorney General. Later, the sheriff hands the entire case file over to him.
And we, of course, had a regular caseload. It wasn't something that we could just drop our normal caseload and start going through.
By then, David Swift has left town. He has a whole new life and a new wife, Kelly Essman.
Single Christians, good news. At ChristianMingle.com.
I met David on Christian Mingle in January of 2014, and we dated for about 2.5 years, and then he moved to Alabama when we got married.
My relationship with my dad during this time period was very good. He made sure that we still had as normal as a childhood as we could, even into our teenage years, you know.
He did start telling me a little bit about Karen and the fact that she had come up missing. He actually asked me to run a background check on him, and the background check comes up clean. You know, none of the news stories showed that he was a person of interest. They didn't say that he was a suspect. It was okay.
I think they had a wonderful relationship. Everybody got along.
It may have started out that way, but Kelly says cracks started to form in the marriage over parenting issues. And she says David never wanted to discuss her concerns. Over the years, she says it grew worse and worse.
There were challenges, and with all blended families, there are, you know, and that's where it started going downhill. We both went to therapy. So I finally just decided I can't go back. This is too much. He finally said that he would file for divorce.
But they have no idea that back in Dyersburg, there's been a break in the Karen Swift investigation, thanks to something completely unrelated, the COVID pandemic.
It was actually good for this case, because at that time we were not allowed to have in-person court. We were not allowed to have jury trials, so we had a lot of time that was just downtime in the office.
We were alone in the office for, I want to say it was around 6 weeks. Looked at every page that was compiled by the Sheriff's Department.
And that's how the case basically was rejuvenated, and we started back with a lot more detail looking into it.
We just basically came to the same conclusion that, yes, David Swift did it.
We noticed maybe that there were a few things that we would like to have to prosecute the case that were not there.
In particular, they say they want information stored on Karen Swift's cell phones, found smashed not far from her home. After a year of trying, experts can't recover that data, but prosecutors say they do come up with more digital evidence from David Swift's computer.
In the days and weeks after Karen vanished, they found that her husband had been visiting all of these multiple dating sites. Why is David looking at dating sites when she hasn't even been found?
David Swift's lawyer claims other people in the house may have been using that computer and accessing those sites. The prosecutors decide they have enough to take the case to a grand jury. David Swift is indicted.
We would never take a case to trial that we did not feel like we could be successful with prosecution. And at that point, we felt that we could.
An arrest has finally been made in the 2011 murder of Karen Swift.
David Swift was arrested today in Alabama, where he was living with his new wife.
David Swift is charged with premeditated first-degree murder.
He was shocked.
Swift is brought back to Tennessee, where he later pleads not guilty to first and second-degree murder and manslaughter. The sheriff posts on Facebook, "Today is a good day for law enforcement." David was always a suspect because all the evidence points to him.
Certainly it wasn't enough evidence to take him into custody and bring it to trial.
Every rumor, every piece of information that came in, we followed up. No one else had a motive. No one else had the opportunity, and he had all of those things.
They told me that my dad got arrested, and in that moment I was like, for what?
What could they possibly have that they arrested him for? Something that happened so long ago.
I think they just wanted to make an arrest to say, we got somebody, because they were getting so much flack from people.
There was nothing groundbreaking, no scientific evidence or anything other than what was in the file. And I'm not saying that Danny Goodman or his office did anything unethical or improper, but sometimes when pressure is applied or pressure is present in a situation, decisions get made, and we just disagreed with his decision to charge David Swift.
I remember getting that first phone call from him after he was in the jail, and I remember his first words weren't, you know, they weren't about him, they were about us, and that everything was going to be okay.
I spoke to David Swift in a jailhouse interview. David, because this is the moment to clear the record, did you kill your wife?
No, absolutely not. She wasn't afraid of me one bit. We never had no domestics, no violence.
Because of the pending criminal charges, Swift says he couldn't talk about the details of the case, but he denied any violence in the marriage. So you said no domestics, meaning you never hurt Karen?
Never.
Never raised a hand to her?
And on no female, ever. And I sure wouldn't do it to my wife or the mother of my children. But, you know, I loved her. And I still love, you know, her today.
But before he goes on trial, accused of killing Karen, a truly shocking development. New details emerge about David Swift's alleged behavior. Weeks after David Swift is arrested and charged with his wife Karen's murder, he's released after posting a $200,000 bond. But in a truly wild turn of events, Swift's legal troubles follow him home to Alabama, where he faces accusations of stalking, this time from his estranged second wife, Kelly Essman.
I was not afraid of David during the marriage. Towards the end of my marriage, I was not necessarily afraid of him. After I separated, there were periods of time when he would call me, asking me, you know, where are you going? You know, I would tell him Hobby Lobby or, you know, just Target or whatever. And he always seemed to be calling exactly when I would be going to that place.
After David's arrest, Kelly claims she found proof that she was being followed and filed for an emergency restraining order.
Kelly alleges that in the midst of all of this turmoil with David, that she came into some information that he actually had purchased a tracking device.
And right then I knew. That's how he knew where I was going. So I knew there's a tracking device somewhere on my car. And we did find the tracking device.
Kelly also claims in her motion that David started reaching out to her, sending repeated messages via text and email.
I repeatedly asked him to stop. It started with us trying to work out the details of the divorce, but it turned into a lot of random harassing emails on various topics.
Kelly files for that emergency restraining order, reporting that she was afraid for her safety, that she believes she may be in danger, and that David's stalking and harassment had become egregious. The judge made no findings on those claims, but the restraining order was granted.
I wanted him to leave me alone. That's all I wanted, just leave me alone.
Even with this new wife that he had and got a divorce, his MO was the same, following her around there in Alabama.
Karen and her friends and family said that David often would follow Karen around, that he was monitoring where she was at, that David would call her.
He even told us he followed her to a local store and got into the back of the car.
As for Kelly, she filed a police report after she claimed David's alleged harassment continued. In coordination with Alabama authorities, investigators back in Tennessee check up on what David Swift has been doing.
When he was put on a bond, the judge allowed an ankle monitor to be put on him. That brought to light data showing that he had been to her house on several occasions and followed her.
And the sergeant calls me, and I'm like, how's that possible? That he knew where I was going. And he said, we think he's got a tracking device on your car. And I'm like, again?
Police pore over Kelly's car looking for a tracking device. They don't find one, but Kelly says she does find something chilling on her security camera system, which 2020 was able to obtain.
I pulled up the feed from that night, and there he was in my backyard in the middle of the night. He had to drive 40 minutes one way to get to my house. And at one of the times he saw him at my house was in the middle of the night for an hour and a half. When I see the video, that's when I become very confused, fearful. And why is this happening? Why is he doing it? I didn't give him any reason to. This is a man I was married to. That I shouldn't have been afraid of.
David's charged with felony stalking in Alabama, and his bond in the Karen Johnson Swift murder case was revoked.
Things moved pretty quickly after that. After they got the indictment, they arrested David Swift. There are pictures of him getting in the car.
With his bond revoked, Swift is brought into custody and sent to Tennessee.
He's been charged with stalking down there. They're going to handle those charges once we dissolve this case here.
David Swift has yet to enter a plea to the stalking charge. His lawyer handling the case hasn't responded to 2020's request for comment. With Swift sitting in jail, attention turns back to his fast-approaching trial for Karen's murder. The case is big news in a small town, and both the prosecution and the defense are about to pull back the curtain on the Swifts' private lives.
Did anyone have no clothes on in the hot tub?
What exactly was going on at those hot tub parties? And what did they have to do with Karen's case?
In Tennessee, we'll bring you inside of the courtroom as both sides prepare for trial.
News of David Swift's trial puts Dyersburg on the map in a way locals have never seen.
When there was finally an arrest in Karen's case, you had TV crews, newsprint media, all these people flooding in to Dyersburg.
How big a deal was this trial in Dyersburg?
This trial was huge. It was high profile. It's been the #1 trial of public interest in Dyersburg.
Interestingly, Karen Swift's murder trial doesn't take place here in Dyer County, Tennessee. Instead, a judge issues a change of venue, and David Swift is tried for murder 50 miles from here in Weakley County, Tennessee. As opening statements begin, the prosecution makes it clear that there is no smoking gun against David Swift.
You are not going to see fingerprint analysis. You're not going to see ballistic testing. We will, however, give you several pieces of a puzzle. And when we get through giving you all of those, we think that we're going to have a complete picture. We knew that a jury would want to see some type of weapon that was used for the murder. And it was just, we were never going to have that in this case.
But the prosecution lays out their theory that David Swift didn't actually need a weapon.
We submit that the defendant dragged her to the garage. Once inside the garage, The defendant stomped Karen on her head with such violence that it caved her skull in.
I was shocked when I heard that because I had not heard that before, and I'm like, okay, we'll see the evidence of that.
The autopsy showed that there was starburst fracturing on the left side, which indicated that her head was against something solid and then was struck from the other side. And our theory is that solid object was the concrete in the garage.
The defense counters that the investigators never found any evidence in the garage to back up this theory.
So you actually walked around the garage and looked at it when you first went out there with Mr. Swift?
Yes, sir.
All right. You didn't see any blood or smell of strong bleach, did you?
I did not.
The prosecution then switches gears to focus on Karen's abandoned car. Remember, investigators say that her tire appeared to have been deliberately punctured.
The flat tire, I think, is one of the more significant pieces of the puzzle in this case.
One thing I did observe was a screw that was in groove number 3. The screw was slightly below the tread surface.
Does that have any significance to you in your examination?
Yes. When an object punctures the tire in the tread area, it will actually rebound as it goes through the tire because of the elastic nature and the structure of the tire.
Could you imagine a situation where a screw entered the tire in service like this, where it ran over an object, perhaps a pebble or a stone, that could have forced the screw head beneath the tread surface?
Well, I wouldn't say it's impossible, but I would say extremely improbable.
It was their contention that the tire was intentionally deflated as a ruse to make people believe that Karen had actually suffered from a flat tire, and that's why her car was there, when in fact that was not the case.
But the defense brings in their own expert, who testifies that the screw could have accidentally punctured that tire.
There's other vehicles could kick up screws or nails. You know, say you're following a construction vehicle and some are on the back of the trailer and they bounce off and you just happen to be behind it. Who knows what angle it's going to strike your tire at as you're going down the roadway.
My expert actually did test on a light tire on a similar wheel and, you know, tried to recreate that and explained it to the jury. And I think the jury has to decide which they believe.
The prosecution also calls Karen's friends, Bill and Kathy Bona, to the stand to testify about how they viewed Karen and David's relationship.
She finally started taking action when she started getting the confidence to say, I'm just done. I can't do this anymore. And the controlling and accusations, she was ready to be done with the marriage because she needed to get out.
The defense argues that Karen had full control of everything she did.
She did the behavior she wanted to, and that's just a reality. And as we move on closer to the time she got a divorce, she would come and go as she wished.
Prosecution asks the Bonas about Kathy's 40th birthday celebration, where they hosted an after party with a group of their friends, which included the use of their hot tub. The Bonas testify that this party led to a confrontation with David Swift.
How were people dressed?
Some people had swimsuits, a couple people did not.
When you say they did not, did they have anything on?
No.
They were nude?
Yes.
Do you know if Miss Swift was in the hot tub?
It was, yes. I mean, I don't remember specifically seeing her, but she enjoyed getting in the hot tub when she came over, you know, in the wintertime when it was cold, so I'm sure she was.
Was Mr. Swift present that night?
He wasn't at first, and he wasn't invited, and he wasn't welcome. Mr. Swift burst into the door, you know, there and startled me and asked where Karen was.
What was his demeanor at that time?
He was agitated, I would say, but I would also say it really caught me off guard. I thought, I don't like this, and I went to get out of the chair to go, you know, ask him to leave, basically, and he came down the stairs and left.
How did he appear when he came down, as far as his attitude and demeanor?
I mean, he came down the stairs and left abruptly and left through the door, you know, quickly enough where I couldn't even really get a word in edgewise.
The prosecution plays David's full police interview in court, where he confirmed that he would sometimes follow Karen to the Bona's house.
Karen started sneaking out of the house, and she would go to be with Kathy and Bill.
Now, when you say go to be with them, what do you mean, go to party with them,
go party and naked in the hot tub in the backyard?
There was a lot of information about the hot tub parties and all of that, so it kind of verified the rumors that were going around that something somewhat wild was going on.
And there is key testimony still ahead as one emotional witness makes waves.
Well, we can call you next witness. Ashley Swift.
And David's own daughter prepares to testify at her father's trial. What will she say when she takes the stand? Inside the Weakley County Courthouse, attorney Daniel Taylor dives into one of the most memorable cases of his career.
I've been a trial lawyer for 32 years, and it's the most media attention on any particular case that I've had. This is 2011. After all those years, there's been no scientific breakthrough or anything. There's been nothing new that's come in or anything. After all this time, there was a charge.
The defense contends that the reason David would follow Karen was because he was worried about what was going on at those hot tub parties.
There were issues about conduct and things that were going on, adult parties, things about hot tub parties, and just some things that maybe some others considered not appropriate.
They call her friend, Robin Alford, who testifies that she saw Karen passed out at Kathy Bona's birthday party.
Did you see Karen Swift leave the hot tub and go into the house?
I did. I witnessed her get up. She looked to me as if she was hot and woozy kind of feeling when I walked in, and I witnessed her laying on the floor.
Did you, were you aware whether or not when you first met the Swifts that they drank alcohol or not?
Karen never drank before she come to Dyersburg, never. And I don't think that she could handle her alcohol at all.
The defense points out that in his police interview, David did express concern for Karen's welfare.
I'd have to go get her and drive her home. They call me. And so I was always concerned and worried about her. There was several times I found her in compromising situations. And I did get upset. And I said, Karen, please, why are you doing this?
The defense was simple. David Swift did not kill Karen Swift. They said it could have been a random act by somebody who was just passing by, either in a car or on foot.
They didn't compare the fingerprints. They just tested David Swift. They had tunnel vision.
The defense also argues that David had a serious knee injury affecting his mobility, so he wouldn't have been physically able to dispose of Karen's body.
They said he had this injured leg, so he could not have possibly picked her up and placed her in the cemetery.
Did you notice anything about his leg or how he was walking?
He had a knee brace on, and he had crutches.
Multiple witnesses for the prosecution dispute the seriousness of David's knee injury.
Was he using crutches?
I've never seen no crutches on Saturday.
Did he appear to be injured in any way?
You could see him using his crutches while he was talking about it. After he got done talking and they went in the house, he just walked like he didn't need crutches anymore. I thought that was strange.
Even if he is faking it, it's still there's a visual there. The jury is repeatedly seeing people get on the stand and say, yes, I saw him on these crutches. Yes, I saw him on these crutches.
The defense also disagrees with the prosecution's account of what happened inside the Swift home on the night of Karen's murder.
So part of the prosecution's theory of the case was that David comes into Karen's room, takes Ashley, the daughter, out of the bed and goes and puts her in bed with the sister Keeley. He returns to the room and Karen is either asleep or in a very incapacitated state, and then something happens where he ends her life.
Then the defense calls an essential witness to challenge that theory.
Would you tell everybody your name?
Ashley Swift. I was nervous to go on the stand, and they decided to call me early. And so in that moment, I did freak out a little bit, just because I hadn't mentally prepared myself.
Ashley, who was only 9 years old when she saw her mom for the last time, describes what she remembers about the hours before Karen disappeared.
You're not used to testifying, so let me just ask you a few things, okay?
Okay.
When your mother picked you up, did she pick you up in her car?
She did.
And where did y'all go after that?
We went home, back to our house where my sister and my dad were.
And do you recall getting out of the car or going to the house? Or do you recall everything about that night?
Yeah, we came into the house and we went to sleep in her bedroom. I didn't really prepare for trial. Whatever was asked was what was asked, and however I answered was however I answered, and I told the truth in everything that I said.
And Ashley testifies that it wasn't her father who moved her from the bed that fateful night.
Oh, I know it was my mother.
How do you know that?
It's instinct to know your mother versus somebody else. You have that bond with that person and you know who it is.
But you didn't actually see her?
No, but I felt her. There were some times during my testimony where they were trying to, I think, trick me into thinking that what I felt and knew was something else, and I made sure to own that. It was my testimony.
So you actually don't know for sure then, do you?
I mean, I have a pretty good instinct to feel what my mother feels like.
Seeing his oldest daughter take the stand becomes a visibly emotional ordeal for David.
I know that it was physically tough, and he knew it was difficult being asked questions.
And finally, after 2 weeks of heated exchanges and moving testimony, there are fireworks inside the jury room where lines are drawn in the sand.
It was divided pretty much down the middle.
It was basically the guys against the girls.
As the courtroom holds its breath for a verse of emotionally charged testimony in David Swift's murder trial, it was time for the lawyers on both sides to make their final plea to the jury.
Karen and David Swift's marriage ended sometime around 3:30 a.m. on October 30th, 2011. Sadly, it didn't end the way Karen had envisioned it might when she filed for divorce earlier that month from David.
My job in closing argument was to convince the jury that there was only one person that could have done this, and that's what I attempted to thread all the evidence together and present them with a coherent theory of what happened that evening.
There was only one person on the planet that could have killed Karen Swift, and it was David.
How do you think the prosecution did in presenting its case to the jurors?
I think that General Goodman had a very, very difficult case. It was an inherited case. It was very old evidence. I think that he did the absolute best that he could to try to bring justice to Karen Swift.
The prosecutor said that he would put the puzzle together, but the puzzle was incomplete. And so that's exactly what I argued. And that his version of the offense and what he claimed happened was incorrect or inconsistent with what was proven.
There is no proof to support the state's theory in this case. You have heard all of my questions. You have heard all of the witnesses. The state said that this was a puzzle that they would put together for a complete picture. There is no complete picture.
In order to return a verdict, it is necessary that each juror agree thereto. Your verdict must be unanimous.
As it was going to the jury, we all kind of sat around and a bunch of family friends showed up, and we were sitting there trying to figure out, oh, what if the jury's saying this? What if they're saying that? But we really didn't know what was going on in that jury room.
We started deliberating. Why don't you think he's guilty? Why do you think he's guilty? We took an initial vote just to see where everybody was, and it was divided pretty much down the middle.
It was basically the guys against the girls.
According to juror David Liggins, some of those male jurors felt there just wasn't enough evidence to convict David Swift.
If you stomp somebody's head on concrete good enough to fracture her skull like it was fractured and busted, and then he can beat every law enforcement and science in the state, I don't believe that's possible this day and time. No physical evidence,
But for other jurors, they say David Swift's behavior towards Karen couldn't be ignored.
In my heart, I really thought he did something when he knew where she was at and what she was doing, because he was following her. That made me think that, yes, he did something.
As the jury was deliberating, things were very tense, and you could sense the tension minute by minute.
I actually was not surprised that the jury was deliberating as long as they did. Anytime you have a circumstantial case, you're going to have a lot of discussions, you're going to have a lot of opinions.
When the jury went out, it was tense on both sides. Both sides were just waiting. You have no choice other than to talk to your client, talk to his family. And so he obviously was nervous, and it could mean either him going home or either him staying, in custody.
After hours of fruitless deliberations, the jury tells the judge they were unable to reach a decision. He instructs them to keep trying.
After 10, 11 hours, you're getting tired.
Mentally exhausted. Everybody was so tired.
They couldn't reach a decision, so they stayed and they went home, and then they came back.
It got a little heated, but anytime you got difference of opinions, it's eventually going to get a little heated.
Finally, after 2 days of deliberation, the jury announces it has reached a decision.
When we walked back in there, everybody was looking, of course. They're going to see if they can tell whether you voted not guilty or guilty. Anybody would have voted like we did. But I do remember looking out in the gallery.
I saw one lady, she was shaking, and the longer it took, it was obvious to me that she was becoming more nervous, and this was pretty much the scene inside the courthouse.
I just prayed we had done the right thing.
Madam Foreperson, has the jury reached a verdict in this case?
Deliberation, the jury has come back in David Swift's murder trial.
Has the jury reached a verdict in this case?
No, Your Honor.
Do you feel like that it is likely that the jury on continued deliberations will reach a verdict?
No, sir.
I think the best word to describe what happened as the verdicts were being read was shock.
Does the jury agree on the highest level of offense that the defendant is either guilty or not guilty?
Yes.
What is the verdict in that?
Not guilty.
The jury came back not guilty on first-degree murder, not guilty on second-degree murder, and they were hung on voluntary manslaughter.
Do you all believe that the jury is hopelessly deadlocked with respect to the charge of voluntary manslaughter? I see everybody nodding their head yes.
I was just sitting there in the chair. I was just kind of just numb. I was like, I can't believe this. We spent all this time presenting the facts, and apparently they just didn't get it. The jury didn't get it.
The first two officers on the scene said that they did walk into the garage that day. I'm sorry, you could smell bleach if he had bleach in there. You could see the blood if he ain't cleaned it up yet. When they gave me a scenario, that's where he done it. And then they can't find nothing. That ended the case for me.
I think it stopped at manslaughter because I felt like he did something. In my heart, I really thought he did something.
When the verdict came in, your reaction?
Honestly, I really was not surprised. Reasonable doubt was everywhere.
I think the way that the prosecution laid it out was the only person that could have done it was David Swift. They didn't present proof that said that it was David Swift. If I removed myself and my knowledge of the case, and I was an independent person, I would have had to have rendered a verdict of not guilty.
One detail that the prosecution wasn't allowed to introduce at trial, David's indictment for allegedly stalking his second wife, Kelly. But some jurors say hearing about that accusation wouldn't have made a difference.
The only thing, in my opinion, that would have changed my outcome was the scenario the prosecution gave. Yes, that woman was beat to death, but they can't convince me that David done it.
Let me take you to the penultimate moment, which is, what was it like to hear the jury say not guilty?
Man, it was great. I thought, finally, it was overwhelming.
Although he was acquitted of murdering Karen, David Swift's legal ordeal is far from over. He's still facing that charge of stalking his second wife and remains in jail as he faces retrial on that voluntary manslaughter charge.
I'm disappointed that the jury didn't reach a decision that I thought they should as to all the offenses. And that's the jury system. And that's why we'll have a retrial.
We were confident going into the first trial. We're equally confident for a second trial. And I think that it's something that we can't give up on. It's just something that we have an obligation to do.
I'm not really sure what you expect to get out of a retrial when we've already seen the presentation of all this evidence before, and everybody has pretty much already formed a decision on it.
And today, 13 years after her mother disappeared, Ashley Swift, Karen and David's daughter, still steadfastly believes in her father's innocence.
Moving forward, I'm not exactly 100% sure what's going to happen. I hope that we can get my dad home soon. He is currently sitting in jail for something that, he shouldn't even be in jail for.
David has missed out on a lot of special things. He has missed the birth of a grandchild, his daughter's graduation from dental hygiene school, his oldest daughter, Ashley. He has missed Keely graduating high school.
What does justice for Karen Swift look like?
I think that in a situation like this, I think that we have to unfortunately reconcile with the fact that there may not be justice.
I will always remember Karen, and I think everybody should remember Karen by her love for children, that she was a great mother and she was a great friend.
I think one of the things I want people to know most about my mom is she's a very caring and nurturing person, and she would do anything for any of us kids or my dad. I would love to have my dad around again and, really fight for justice for my mom.
A selfless and caring single mother.
She just loves life.
Dana would help in any way she could.
Is ruthlessly killed in her own home.
There was a great deal of damage to her throat.
It was a rather brutal attack.
And it would have taken somebody very, very strong to have done that kind of damage.
Leaving a family devastated.
I cried every night.
You just can't fathom it. You can't comprehend it.
Police uncover a deadly obsession.
She was being stalked by this guy. He had become violent. He was a heavy drug user.
To expose a killer closer than expected.
How is that possible? Someone that Dana was trying to help. That had to be a huge betrayal.
Every time they looked at an obvious suspect, that person had an alibi.
What I was told completely changed everything.
That was quite a shock.
I couldn't believe it.
It was all a bunch of lies.
Puyallup, Washington, a charming and peaceful town at the foot of Mount Rainier.
The city of Puyallup is about 30 miles south of Seattle, 6 miles east of Tacoma.
It's just a nice little town. It's a community, a lot of families, parks.
Has a small town feel to it. There's a lot of small businesses. The downtown area is easily walkable. It's a terrific little community.
The tranquility is shattered in August 2001 when police get a call from a worried couple who cannot reach their nanny, Dana Laskowski, even after several attempts to contact her.
We got a call from Dana's employers that she hadn't shown up for work. Her employers assured us it was very unusual for Dana to not show up.
An officer is sent to Dana's home to investigate and arrives at 11 a.m., 3 full hours after she was expected to arrive for work.
The officer arrived. He knocked on the front, knocked on the back door, and found the back door ajar. He walked in the back door, walked through the kitchen, and through the house, and found an adult female who's deceased on the couch in the living room.
Working off a general description, the officer identifies the victim as Dana Laskowski. The crime scene is secured until detectives from Puyallup PD arrive.
When we found her on the couch, we see the position of her body, and that's unusual. Her one arm is underneath her head, her other arm is behind her back. She's twisted so that her waist is at an awkward angle. The awkward twist to her body is something that we don't normally see in a natural death scene. It just has a sense that it's a murder. We saw abrasions to the neck, and there was a small pool of blood at her mouth. We did see abrasions on her elbows and knees.
The investigators' suspicions are confirmed. Dana was murdered.
What it looked like was a strangulation that occurred on the couch, and then the offender simply left her in the position that we found her.
Forensic technicians searched the living room for evidence.
Primarily, the items that we collected were either hair or fibers, and then extensively processed for fingerprints. When we were processing the carpet, we discovered blood trail or spatter of some sort.
The locations of those were believed to be consistent with the struggle.
Investigators continue their work throughout the rest of the home.
It looked to me like the house had been ransacked. It had a feel that it had been searched, where someone was looking for something. We discovered a basement window that had appeared to have been recently broken, and it was possibly a point of entry.
One of the first things we're going to wonder is, was the victim murdered by a burglar that broke into her house during the night? Or was the murderer somebody that she had invited over the house?
As they wrap up their work at the scene, detectives contact Dana's family to deliver the tragic news.
My son phoned me, and I said, yeah, and he said, Dana's dead. That was it. I was pretty much in shock, and I said, tell me one more time, say what you said, because I didn't want to believe it. You can't imagine that, because, you know, there was no reason.
Born in 1965, Dana's childhood was filled with joy.
She was the happiest kid in the world. It was so easy. She just loved life.
Dana was also creative, a special bond she shared with her father, Bill, an award-winning artist.
She was always making things. She was artistic, like me, and was interested in what I did and wanted to help. So we were close.
Just being around her, you felt her energy. You felt her enthusiasm and her zest for living each moment.
As she grew older, Dana developed a nurturing spirit.
She was babysitting from the time she was very young, and she loved the kids, and she always wanted to have a daycare.
In 1989, Dana met Sam and fell in love. The couple married quickly, but from the start, there were complications.
She was having trouble getting pregnant.
In 1993, after years of fertility treatments, Dana's wish of starting a family finally came true.
She was so excited when she found out she was pregnant, because that's what she really wanted all her life, and it was a pretty exciting time.
Dana's delight only grew when she discovered they were having triplets.
She loved the kids, because then she could bake and she could make things and do art. She loved it, she really did.
But by 2000, after 11 years of marriage, the stress of parenting took its toll on their relationship.
Dana told me that she had moved and that they were separated.
As a single mom, Dana worked hard to provide a good home for her triplets. Dana cared deeply about family, and especially for her troubled 17-year-old niece, Amanda, with whom she was very close.
Dana would do anything for Amanda.
Amanda loved Dana, because, you know, Dana was kind of this flashy, artistic type person, and Amanda loved all that too.
Dana was a very kind, caring person, loved her family, Amanda was a frequent runaway, so Dana wanted to guide Amanda out of risky behavior, away from drugs, away from the runaway lifestyle.
Amanda had a rough relationship with her parents, so would often turn to her favorite aunt.
By all accounts, she was the kind of the cool aunt that you could go and actually tell the truth to about your problems. No judgment, just help.
Dana soon became a surrogate mom to Amanda and her best friend, Emily Lauenborg.
Food, showers, a warm place to stay, money. Dana would open her heart and her home to help in any way she could.
She was a mentor and also a friend.
Dana had an open door policy and would always welcome Amanda's friends to her home.
She was very comfortable at her age being amongst teenagers as though they were her peers.
Just everybody loved her.
But now, all that is left is loss and unanswered questions.
For us to lose Dana was so hard.
Losing a child is probably the worst thing that can ever happen. And, she shouldn't have died before me.
Who would want this loving and generous spirit dead? And why?
This murder was very unusual. Right from the start, we had a lot of things that needed to be done in order to find the killer.
Back at the station, detectives start reaching out to those closest to Dana. They begin with her ex-husband, Sam, who they learn has the triplets staying with him.
As the ex-husband, Sam, is a person of interest and the first person we needed to look at. But we couldn't find him. The fact that he was missing, this is significant to us. We have to find him.
Coming up, investigators uncover a dark obsession.
He had kind of gotten fixated on her, and he didn't really take no for an answer.
And alarming secrets.
In the journal, it said 10 things I want to do before I die, and one of those 10 things was kill somebody and get away with it.
That point to a killer no one would ever suspect.
I felt what he was telling me was not possible.
You just can't comprehend that it's real.
And the truth is finally revealed.
That's about as close to a confession as you're going to get.
Police investigating the murder of mother of three, Dana Laskowski, are trying to track down her estranged husband, Sam, when suddenly they receive a surprise call.
Sam actually reached out to the police to try to find out what had happened. Sam, it turned out, he had taken his kids camping and away from his phone and away from contact. And so when he got back to civilization, he had all these messages that Dana was murdered.
So we went up to interview Sam, Dana's ex. And so when we confirmed that Dana was murdered, Sam was upset. He would respond to all of our questions, but he's just not the kind of person that elaborates. As we were talking to Sam, we noticed he did have some abrasions on his knees, and that's unusual. We asked him about that, and he said they were from playing baseball. It was baseball season.
Detectives press Sam about his feelings toward Dana.
When asked about his relationship with Dana, Sam described it as they were estranged, but they co-parented their kids, and they've had arguments, but overall, they were trying to make it work.
Sam and Dana just grew apart.
When she moved away, she was so excited. I think it made her feel good about knowing that she could be independent, and I think that was important for her to be able to do that on her own.
We just felt that Sam was mad at Dana for having relocated 3 hours away and had split the family, and the hopes of having a family and a marriage were dashed and destroyed.
Was that enough to push Sam over the edge and harm Dana?
Based on the information that we had about her ending her time with her husband and becoming estranged, we thought Sam had possibly come over to discuss something that has to do with custody, and they'd gotten into a fight, and the fight resulted in Dana's death.
Police ask Sam where he was the night of Dana's murder.
Sam said that he had left his kids at his home and he went and got gas. He showed us a receipt for that gas. He said the next day he went camping with the triplets.
Detectives believe Dana was killed sometime between midnight and 7 a.m., but Sam cannot corroborate where he was at that particular time.
There wasn't an ironclad alibi. He didn't have 3 adults who would be able to say he was with us all night. There were kids, they were sleeping. It was not impossible for Sam to have left the kids and come back to Dana's house and committed the murder.
And we looked at the possibility that he filled up his gas tank, drove to Puyallup, killed Dana, and then drove back to the kids at the home.
Investigators pressed Sam further.
Sam denied killing Dana. When we approached Sam for his fingerprints and his DNA, he was not necessarily agreeable or cooperative, didn't like the idea that he was a potential suspect. He certainly didn't like the idea that we thought that he might be responsible for her murder.
Sam didn't really want to cooperate with requests for DNA and hair samples.
Sam's behavior may be suspicious, but police have no concrete evidence to tie him to the murder.
You can't charge someone with a crime just because their alibi isn't ironclad. You can't charge them with a crime because they can't prove they were someplace else. You have to prove that they committed that crime. There has to be evidence at the scene that connects the person to the crime. And so in this particular case, they didn't have that with Sam.
While police seek hard evidence against Sam, Dana's autopsy results come in.
The results were that she had died of strangulation.
The cause of death was a fracture of the cricoid cartilage in her throat.
There was a great deal of damage to her throat, her windpipe, and it would have taken somebody very, very strong to have done that kind of damage.
We were going to be looking for an offender who had upper body strength and prone to flying into a rage. Because of the fracture of the cricoid cartilage takes a great deal of strength. And a strangulation itself takes a very committed attack. The victim generally fights back. And then the attacker has to double down on the strangulation while the victim is struggling back.
Just to think that Dana struggled and fought for her life, it's just wrong. It's all wrong.
Looking for new leads, detectives turn to Dana's niece.
Police contacted Amanda as she was a relative and somebody who knew the victim. And what Amanda said was that Dana was the kind of person where she could go over, do laundry, maybe get a little bit of money. That was who she was, and that's how she helped out Amanda. And she didn't know what had happened or who would want to murder her aunt.
Detectives also speak to the couple who employed Dana as a nanny. When asked if they knew of anyone who might want to harm Dana, their answer is chilling.
Dana's employers told us that Dana was being stalked by this guy. Her employers told us that Dana had said that if anything happened to her, he'd be the one. And that was significant to us because I'm looking for a killer.
Police investigating the strangling of Dana Laskowski have been told that she was being harassed by a stalker. Could he be her killer?
Dana's employers told us that Dana was afraid of this Patrick. Patrick was a guy that installed cable in Dana's area. He liked her.
Dana had told her sister-in-law and her employer he had kind of gotten fixated on her. Dana, by accounts, let him know that she wasn't interested.
Police learned that Patrick had been trying to contact Dana for over a month straight, and that his pursuit had become even more intense.
Patrick was leaving notes and flowers on her back porch. He wrote some notes that were like poems.
Then, the messages took a disturbing turn.
Dana's friends told the investigators he left her a note letting her know that he had been observing her and seen her doing things inside her home that he wouldn't know unless he was observing her.
Dana mentioned that she was concerned about someone possibly watching her.
The thing that really concerned Dana was that it appeared that he had her under surveillance. Dana had actually told a couple of people that if I ever turn up dead, Patrick did it.
Investigators checked Dana's phone records, searching for any clues.
The phone records indicated that Patrick had phoned Dana repeatedly.
It wasn't just some guy who, sent her a couple extra texts and then disappeared. This was somebody who was going beyond that, doing stalking type things that would be concerning in any context.
When investigators look into Patrick further, they make an alarming discovery.
Patrick was driving a white van. It was a ladder truck. We had neighbors that had identified a white van in the area around Dana's residence prior to the murder.
His work van had been seen in the alley behind the house. It was a white van, so it matched the description that the neighbors had mentioned.
Pretty much demanded that we look at him as a very real suspect in killing Dana.
Did Patrick's obsession with Dana turn deadly?
We immediately got a search warrant for his DNA, for his locker, for his vehicle.
On September 2nd, detectives find Patrick at his home address.
We served the search warrant on him. He was very belligerent and very uncooperative with us during the service of that search warrant.
He didn't want to answer questions. He didn't want to let them in the house. He did the kind of things that you might expect somebody to do if they had, in fact, been stalking someone and had gotten caught doing that.
Investigators bring Patrick down to the station where they tell him Dana has been murdered.
His demeanor changed 180 degrees from being belligerent and confrontational to Dana is dead. He says, I'm sorry, I didn't know that. I didn't kill her. Here, please take my DNA, search everything. I'm not the one who killed her.
Detectives ask Patrick where he was the night Dana was murdered.
Patrick said that he was at work that evening. He then hung out with some friends and went to bed.
Once given the information for his alibi, investigators looked into it, and they were actually able to verify it. He had an alibi and could not have committed the murder.
We also ruled out Patrick's ladder truck with the van the neighbors told us that they saw drive around Dana's residence. There was nothing in the service of the search warrant or in our investigation that indicated that Patrick wasn't being truthful with us.
Given what he had done and the ways in which he had scared Dana prior to that, he's very lucky that his alibi could be confirmed.
Having cleared Patrick, investigators now focus on another man in Dana's life, Michael, who they learn was having a long-distance relationship with her.
Michael lived up in Canada, worked in the film industry. Dana met him when she was up in Canada visiting one of her friends.
And they hit it off, and so they started to date. But he stayed in Vancouver, and she was down in Puyallup, and that's a several-hour drive from Puyallup to Canada.
Friends tell police that their relationship was not without problems.
They said Michael would party to the level of like a teenager, that he was at a certain level of partying that Dana didn't approve of. And so Dana was a little uncomfortable with that.
There'd been a point where Dana had broken it off, but he was still interested, so they tried to make it work and get back together.
But when detectives dig deeper, they learn Michael has a darker side.
We were told that Michael was a biker, that he was a heavy drug user.
Police also uncover a significant piece of information.
Dana confessed to a friend that she'd had a one-night stand. And when Dana had that one-night stand, she was still in a relationship with Michael.
Could this have been a motive for Michael to kill Dana?
When we found out that Dana had a one-night stand, we looked at Michael as a potential suspect, possibly murdering Dana out of revenge.
In Investigators searching for the killer of single mother Dana Leskowski have a new possible suspect, her boyfriend Michael. Detectives want to know if an infidelity may have led to Dana's death.
That caused us to believe that we had to rule him out as a person of interest. Michael lived in Canada, so we went up, and when we talked to Michael about Dana's death, it appeared to us that he was very emotionally overcome by it, that Dana was the love of his life, and that she had been taken out of his life, and that he was very seriously grieved.
Michael also tells police he knew about the one-night stand, but had moved on. Detectives press him further.
Michael told us that when he was on the phone with Dana on the night of her death, that she seemed a little guarded to him. He told her that he loved her, and then she didn't tell him back that she loved him, and he thought that was a little odd.
He didn't like how the conversation ended.
And that prompted him to want to get on the road and come down and see her and see if everything was okay.
Michael claims he never made it to see Dana.
He said he was stopped at the border and he was turned away. He had some legal matter up in Canada that wasn't settled, and so he wasn't admitted. There was border crossing records that verified his alibi, that he did not cross the border.
He got stopped by Border Patrol, and so he was able to show definitively that he was not anywhere near Puyallup at the time of Dana's murder.
We didn't find the evidence to support that Michael had committed the murder.
Michael is ruled out as a suspect. Police also determined the man Dana had a one-night stand with was nowhere near her house on the night of the murder.
At this point of the investigation, we just were really kind of at a dead end.
I mean, there were all these people who would have been really good, solid suspects in any homicide investigation, but all of them had alibis, and all the alibis were verified.
I was frustrated that the case wasn't moving forward, that it wasn't advancing.
With the case at a standstill, detectives search for any detail they may have overlooked.
Where Dana's ashes are inurned, there's a book, and people can go and write their memoirs.
The book has been left open for comments since Dana's funeral.
If the perpetrator was someone who went to the funeral, and if the perpetrator was someone who maybe has some guilt about that, they may have left a clue behind.
When detectives look at the book, one entry, written over a month after the funeral, grabs their attention.
One of the memoirs that was written by Dana's niece, Amanda. And she said, "I'm so sorry I wasn't a better niece for you. 34 days clean and sober. It's all for you."
That was significant. There was something about the way that she'd written it that suggested it was a communication to Dana of remorse and to make amends for what had happened. And it was something that was significant enough to follow up on.
Why did Amanda write that she had let Dana down? Detectives have a hunch that she may know more about her aunt's death than she's been letting on.
That's it. That's the key. The key is the niece. I called Amanda in for an interview. When I asked her, "What do you know?" she said, "I wasn't there. I don't know what happened."
With Dana gone, Amanda has been missing a mother figure, getting into trouble, and as detectives learn, spending time with a rough crowd.
In the center of Puyallup downtown, we had Pioneer Park, and a lot of troubled teens would hang out there. The park kids called themselves the Park Rats. Amanda usually would be out around town in the middle of the night, hanging out with the Park Rats.
Dana would often welcome Amanda's circle of friends into her own home. Could one of the Park Rats that Amanda knows have been somehow involved in Dana's death?
And I talked to her about who of her friends would meet this profile of having upper body strength, prone to flying into a rage. And Amanda said, "Well, it sounds like you're describing Blaine." She said Blaine actually attacked her on a couch, and it was a rather brutal attack.
Blaine had come on to her, and that she had rejected him, and that he had become violent.
Had Blaine tried the same thing on Dana, only for things to turn deadly?
Blaine had been at Dana's house before in some casual get-togethers, and possibly Dana would have rebuffed that advance and that Blaine would be the kind to fly into a rage.
Then, Amanda reveals something else.
Amanda said that while we were processing her Auntie Dana's crime scene, she was across the street. She ran into Blaine there. She said that Blaine had scratches on his arms. When I get this information from Amanda, I look into Blaine and I find that he's got a violent past and he has quite a criminal history.
Police learn that Blaine's rap sheet is extensive and littered with drug and gun charges.
I felt he was a very good person of interest in the murder of Dana Laskowski.
But there's a big problem. Blaine is no longer in Washington.
I found him living in the far southeast part of the United States. I wanted to bring him back to Washington to collect his DNA, to talk to him as a person of interest. But he was not cooperating.
As investigators attempt to extradite Blaine, they seek out known criminals he's associated with and find one of them, a friend of Blaine's, serving time in jail.
I sat down with him and I said, I'm looking at Blaine as being responsible for the murder of Amanda's aunt. He's got this upper body strength, he's prone to violence. And he looked at me and he said, Blaine didn't kill Amanda's aunt. What I was told completely changed everything.
Detectives hunting the killer of Dana Laskowski have a new suspect, Blaine, the troubled friend of Dana's beloved niece, Amanda. With Blaine out of state, investigators grill his friend in jail, and what he tells them is explosive.
So police suggested to him that maybe Blaine had been involved. The friend said, no, it's not Blaine, it's Emily.
He said, Emily killed Amanda's aunt.
It's a stunning allegation. 17-year-old Emily Lauenborg is Amanda's best friend and someone who Dana treated like a daughter.
I felt what he was telling me was not possible because Dana always had an open door and was always welcoming to Emily.
Police found out that a lot of times Amanda and Emily would show up at Dana's house.
Dana was somebody that Emily could go to safely regardless of the circumstances, and Dana would take her in.
So as you can imagine, that was quite a shock to the team.
To confirm his story, investigators speak to other members of the Park Rats.
Two of these kids told me, yes, Emily killed Amanda's aunt. Blaine didn't kill Amanda's aunt.
Nobody doubts that Emily did it. Nobody.
One of these individuals told us that Emily was doing a lot of drugs.
Had Emily's reckless behavior somehow played a role in Dana's death?
I was told that they all had nicknames for each other, and that Emily's nickname was Mutant.
The first nickname that we called her was the Mutant, because she was stronger than any other girls that we knew. Everybody's scared. She'll beat your ass. She'll knock you out.
She was tough. She would challenge them to wrestling. She would beat them in wrestling. She was very intense.
And I was told she's able to choke people. She would wrap one arm around their neck, grab the other hand, and flip their body over her hip. And that was consistent with the body position that we found Dana Laskowski in. Twisted at the waist, with one arm behind her back and an injury to the neck.
And so the initial thought that it can't be her was slowly replaced with, well, maybe it could be her. She's intense, she's strong, and everybody seems to be kind of scared of her.
Did Emily actually kill Dana? And if she did, what could be her motive for committing such a heinous crime? Investigators bring Emily in for an interview.
I sat down with her and I had a tape recorder. She said, aren't you going to turn that thing on? I would say she was quite self-confident, a little cocky.
She was not particularly cooperative with efforts to talk to her about what happened.
I said, you know, here you are, sitting in a police station under suspicion of murder, and you're playing this game with a detective. And I said, look at these people right here that have told us you killed her. And she said, those people are lying, and that she didn't do it. She got very angry. Those people are lying.
When investigators ask Emily where she was the night of the murder, she dodges the question.
She was bartering and arguing with me and not really giving me a clear defense and denial.
Officers obtain a warrant to search Emily's residence.
One of the items that they recovered from Emily's apartment was a shirt that Emily had taken from Dana.
One of her friends told us that Emily had a black shirt that belonged to Dana and that she actually wore that to Dana's funeral. We went back to the pictures of the funeral and did see that Emily was wearing a black shirt.
One possible explanation for that was rubbing her nose in it. Not only did I kill you, but I'm wearing your blouse to your funeral.
The search uncovers more incriminating evidence.
And we found this journal. And in the journal, it said, 10 things I want to do before I die. And one of those 10 things was kill somebody and get away with it.
One of the statements in the journal that Emily wrote in her own hand when talking about Amanda, because she'd gotten into an argument with Amanda, was, I could effing strangle that bitch just like her aunt.
So that was very significant. I was invigorated because I had something.
That's about as close to a confession as you're going to get. It is absolutely sufficient for me to take that to a jury and say, this is her admitting that she killed Dana Laskowski.
On March 13th, 2003, Emily is charged with first-degree murder.
When I found out that Emily did what she did, I couldn't believe it.
When you find out that such a young person could take a life, how is that possible? Someone that Dana was trying to help and care for, that had to be a huge betrayal. You just can't fathom it. You can't comprehend it. It's devastating.
Though Emily is in custody, prosecutors know most of the evidence against her is circumstantial. So they circle back to Amanda.
It had become pretty clear that Amanda was going to be the key to solving this. We needed Amanda to crack, because absent that, or a confession, there wouldn't have been enough to prove that Emily committed that crime.
If Amanda did know what happened, why hadn't she told police? And why had she covered for her best friend?
So I meet with Amanda and I said, listen, Amanda, you have led us on a wild goose chase. Starting off with Blaine, who was in another state. He didn't do this. You have not come forward with this right from the start. You know what? This is a case of conspiracy after the fact. So tell me what happened. That's when she really cried and sobbed.
Police have charged local teen Emily Lauenborg with the murder of Dana Laskowski. Now, investigators suspect Emily's best friend, Amanda, Dana's own niece, may also be involved.
I said, all right, tell me what happened. You've sent us on every possible goose chase and every rabbit trail you could head us down. It was all a bunch of lies.
Through tears, Amanda makes a horrific revelation.
Amanda disclosed that she and Emily came to Dana's house and they came to the back door. They were high on some drugs and they just went up to try to get some money. And Emily was rude and Dana said, you girls have to go.
Things quickly escalate.
Emily was being belligerent and Dana touched Emily to kind of guide her out the door, and Emily just exploded into a rage or attack.
Basically, she attacked her, put her in that wrestling hold, and squeezed too tight with some kind of scarf or fabric.
Amanda said she turned around because she didn't want to watch what was happening.
But she heard a crack. and she heard a gurgle. She heard Dana gasping for her life, and then she didn't hear anything. And that was because Dana was dead.
And then they took the money and left.
It seemed to be, by Amanda's account, that it was kind of an explosive situation that got out of control. They didn't go to the house to murder Dana.
I was told that Emily had said that Amanda was always ditching her for her aunt.
Emily, she was jealous of Dana.
It's my opinion that the motive Emily had was to get Dana's influence out of Amanda's life, and Emily just went over there with the intention of getting Dana so mad at Amanda that Amanda wouldn't be welcome at Dana's anymore, and that Emily would have achieved what she wanted, and that the murder simply got out of control because of emotions and drugs.
But why didn't Amanda come forward earlier to tell the truth about what happened that night?
I asked her, why didn't you tell us right up front, right at the start? She said, because of my family. It's so bad now. What's it going to be like now when they find out?
She wasn't involved in the murder, but she was involved because she was there at that time, and I don't know why she didn't do anything. It was upsetting and surprising to all of us.
Prosecutors need Amanda's testimony to have any hope of convicting Emily for murder. Amanda agrees and will not face any charges herself.
If she's charged with a crime, then she has the right to remain silent.
She was the star witness for the case. If we had charged her criminally, we couldn't have called her as a witness.
Despite the agreement, prosecutors fear Amanda won't keep her side of the deal.
The biggest challenge for us, from a prosecution standpoint, was that setting aside Amanda's testimony, everything else was circumstantial. Wearing a blouse can be explained away. An angry journal entry can also be explained away. I think the only way that we could have been successful in front of a jury was to have Amanda take the stand. The problem was knowing exactly where Amanda's loyalties would be. She was very conflicted. And there was definitely a chance that Amanda could have taken the stand and said, I lied to the police when I said what I saw, and I didn't see any of that.
I was very concerned that the jury was going to listen to this case and look at Emily and say, I just don't buy it.
This is a case where, had we taken it to a jury, all of those questions that had come up in the investigation, all the initial leads, all the doubts that it could really have been Emily, all the alternate explanations were certainly enough that it could have been that a jury had decided that we just didn't prove it beyond a reasonable doubt.
Prosecutors face a difficult choice. Risk Emily walking free after a jury trial, or guarantee at least some jail time with a plea deal.
Ultimately, what we're trying to do here is to make sure that we hold the killer responsible. Emily was allowed to plead guilty to a lesser charge of manslaughter.
On January 21st, 2004, over 2 years after Dana's murder, Emily is formally sentenced.
Emily was charged as an adult. Her sentence was just under 7 years.
Even though Emily is sent to prison, her sentence brings a mix of emotions.
I felt a sense of relief that someone was now being held accountable for Dana's death, but I did feel angry.
I thought, well, at least it's something, you know. But it just was amazing that you could take the life of a young mother and only get like 6 years. Doesn't make sense.
Dana's family was upset that the sentence was so light. They felt that the person responsible for taking the life of Dana should have been given a stiffer sentence.
It was really tragic. And one of the things about the criminal justice system is it doesn't put things back the way they were. It just tries to hold people responsible so people can move forward.
I cried every night. I think I must have cried for a year. I miss her a tremendous amount. And I will think about her forever.
I don't think we ever will get over the loss of something so tragic.
I can't really say her family ever had closure because to them, the loss was the loss of Dana. A gavel dropping doesn't undo that loss.
I miss her a lot.
I think Dana would want to be remembered as a loving mother, a loving friend, and a loving child.
Lily Aramburu has recently given birth to a son named Paulden.
Oh, she was the happiest mother. She was dedicated and very proud of her baby.
She is also newly engaged to her boyfriend, Christian Pacheco.
I thought this is what Lily needs, somebody that can support her emotionally, somebody stronger, having already some kind of life going. And I thought it was gonna be a good thing.
We were in love. We had a good time. We enjoyed each other's company.
After a few months of being together, Lily decides to move into Christian's condo in Kendall.
I felt as if Lily was on the right track. She was taking care of herself. She seemed fine.
But Lily's path has not always been a smooth one. Growing up in Miami, Lily had lots of friends and was known as a sweet, peaceful girl who loved nature.
She would like to be in the park or just being in nature, whatever it was. Even if it's just walking anywhere, she will pay attention to a tree, a flower, a bird, any kind of animals. She would admire everything and feel part of it.
But in her teen years, Lily begins spending more and more time with her friends.
The crowd that she was hanging out with, they were having a lot of fun, but also there started to be a little too much fun. So they were a little bit out of control.
Lucely begins to grow concerned about her daughter's extracurricular activities.
I'm sure there was a lot of alcohol involved, a lot of partying, possibly pot at that time, if not other drugs.
Before long, Lily drops out of high school, and she starts spending many nights away from home.
One of the times I did not hear from her for about 2-3 weeks, which is, almost the longest that I ever been without contact.
Lucely finds out why her daughter isn't communicating from one of Lily's friends. Lily has started experimenting with heroin.
And of course, I panicked and I looked for help, and I went to look for her.
Lucely drives all over Miami for 2 days, searching for her daughter. And then, near a park in Coconut Grove, something catches her eye.
I saw some rocks and I saw a little head, and I just recognized my daughter's hair. And I stopped, and sure enough, that was her. She did not look good. She looked very, very weak. And I just looked at her and broke my heart. I never seen her so skinny and so bad in my life.
Over the next few years, Lily becomes increasingly involved with heroin and crack. Her life seems to be spiraling downward. And then, in January of 2006, Lily gets some life-changing news. She is pregnant with her boyfriend's child.
She was surprised. She wasn't expecting that. She was very happy.
For Lily, finding out she was pregnant provided an incentive to turn her life around.
She definitely wanted to stop the use of drugs, and she wanted to change her life knowing that there was another person coming into life, and she was responsible for it.
She changed completely. She was very positive. She started taking care of things in her life that had been neglected in the past. So it was a very happy time for her.
To Lily's mother and her close friend Janet Forte, it looks like Lily is finally headed in the right direction.
She was thrilled about it, and it was the happiest moment, the happiest time of her life.
In September of 2006, Lily gives birth to a baby boy and names him Paulden.
She was nurturing, very loving. She was always holding him, always carrying him and hugging him.
In the meantime, Lily breaks up with her boyfriend and starts getting closer to one of her friends, Christian Pacheco.
I told her, I was always in love with you. I always loved you. And she's like, I love you. I've always had those feelings for you.
What happened, I believe, after Lily giving birth, she felt a little bit too lonely. And Christian was always pursuing her, telling her that he would always be there and offering all these things for her, that security, comfort.
Within a month, Christian and Lily are engaged to be married. And that's when Lily moves into Christian's condo.
We talked and I said, you want to stay? You want to move in? She's like, yeah, I do. So that's how we ended up living together.
At first, things seemed to be going well.
Lily was happy to be with Christian.
It felt, like we're a family. We would take walks at night together. There were many times we go out to the beach, swimming in the water and having fun.
But all too soon, Lucely starts to notice a change in her daughter.
I can just tell that she wasn't all that happy. It was just that she wasn't open. She would not tell me what was going on. I thought they were probably having a little bit of, adjusting problems and stuff.
I thought, being that I hadn't heard from her, I thought it was a good thing. I thought that she was getting her life in order with her fiancé.
What Lily's mother and her friend Janet don't know is that Lily is back on drugs. Both she and Christian have been using heroin and crack cocaine, sometimes for days on end.
After 3 days of that, your mind starts, just playing tricks on you and getting the better of you. And that's where the problem started. You should be very agitated, very on edge about the littlest things.
Lily and Christian begin fighting frequently. On several occasions, the police are called to the condo.
I didn't know they were fighting until one day that they called me up and said that there was an argument at the house and the police was there and child services were involved. That's when I knew they were fighting a lot. Alden was removed from the house. He went to a foster home while Lily was in drug court.
Lily is devastated.
This day had taken her pride and joy away from her, and I couldn't do anything for her. Except try to be there to console her, and talk to her and say, look, we just have to do the right thing. So whatever process they want you to go through, we got to go through.
Lily checks into a local rehab program, hoping that she can regain custody of Paulden after a 3-month stay.
It was a live-in facility, and it was one of the best. So she was very happy about that. She was ready.
But after just 2 weeks, Christian gets a discouraging call from Lily.
Wednesday, she calls me up and says that I'm out. And she's crying.
Lily has relapsed. She had failed a mandatory drug test and was kicked out of the program.
Christian picked her up and took her to his house. I wasn't allowed to be with her at the moment because she had no visitations with the baby. And that same day that she got released from the rehab, I got temporary custody of the baby. So she wasn't allowed to be near the baby at that time.
Lucely goes home alone with Paulden, desperate to help her daughter, but unsure how to do it. At 2 a.m. on June 2nd, Lucely's phone rings. It's Christian, and he has some disturbing news.
I'm sleeping, and I get this phone call from Christian telling me that Lily walked out of the house and that she hasn't coming back and that he filed a missing persons report.
Christian tells Lucely that Lily had left the house the night before after arguing with Christian. Lucely is not sure what to make of Christian's call.
I thought that was odd, but I didn't think much of it. They probably had a fight and that she was gonna come back.
At the time, Lucelli has no idea that Lily has disappeared. Coming up, a troubling incident might shed light on Lily's disappearance.
She was just really, really drunk, and she tried to hang herself in my closet. I broke the pole down, put her on the bed. She's still frantic, still crying.
In 7, 23-year-old Lily Aramburu has walked out of her boyfriend Christian's condo. After 2 days, she still hasn't come home, and Lily's loved ones are becoming concerned.
The only thing that I remember her telling me is Christian says Lily went missing and he already reported her missing, not to worry.
I thought that she just had a fight with Christian and she went to somebody else's house for a while, but she was gonna call me and let me know that she was okay, and that just never happened.
According to the police report that Christian filed, Lily had walked out of the condo at around 2 a.m. the night before. He also told police what Lily had been wearing and what she might be carrying with her.
What I did see her last wearing was a nightgown. She was sitting at my desk playing with a pair of my bungee cords. And the next day, I looked around the house and I couldn't find them.
Strangely, the bungee cords Christian used on his bike rack are missing, but Lily had left everything else behind.
She left her phone there, she left her purse there, she left everything at my house. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. It's like, why would she leave everything? If she was gonna leave, why wouldn't she at least take a phone with her or something?
Days go by with no word from Lily. So Lily's mother and her friend Janet decide to pay Christian a visit to find out more about the events leading up to Lily's disappearance.
Christian didn't know that we were coming. We showed up at his house, and he was very, very nervous and very energetic.
They immediately start asking Christian questions about the night of May 31st.
And he started telling us, what happened.
According to Christian, after he picked Lily up from rehab, they decided to buy drugs at a rundown crack house in Coconut Grove. From there, they went back to the condo with 2 friends, EJ and Kelly. At one point, Kelly leaves the room.
I guess it was too noisy out in the living room for her, so she went into the bedroom, lay down. Lily and I were talking, and she got upset that Kelly went into the bedroom. So she was like, you want to be with Kelly now, blah, blah, blah.
Christian promises Lily that nothing is going on between Kelly and him, and asks Kelly to leave their bedroom.
I went back to talk to Kelly. He said, look, give us our room tonight. Lily's not in a good mood.
But before Christian returns to the living room, Lily leaves.
I figured maybe she went to, a lot of times when Lily's upset, she likes to pick flowers. She likes to just have her peaceful time with nature. But then, as the day went on to the next night, I was really starting to get panicky. Like, what happened? Like, where did she go? Why would she just disappear on me like this?
One possible theory is that Lily is still out wandering the street in a drug-induced fog. But another element of Christian's police report raises a more troubling possibility.
Lily was diagnosed with schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, and depression.
The diagnosis had come during Lily's stint at rehab the previous month.
I was in shock that a person can have all these diagnoses at once. I knew she was depressed, and I thought it was postpartum depression.
Lily was also on medication for depression and anxiety, and according to Christian, she had stopped taking it. One possibility investigators must consider is that Lily has taken her own life. She may have even used the bungee cords to hang herself somewhere outside her home. In fact, according to Christian, she had tried to hang herself just a few weeks earlier.
She was just really, really drunk, and she tried to hang herself in my closet. I broke the pole down, put her on the bed. She's still frantic, still crying, and finally was able to calm her down and went to bed that night.
Despite Lily's recent psychological evaluation, Lucely and Janet cannot believe that she has committed suicide.
Killing herself, not even in the moment like that was so bad, Lily would have done it. It wasn't on her.
They also don't think she left intentionally.
At that time, I really didn't know what to think, but I felt as if something was wrong. I felt uneasy and worried. I did not think it was a possibility that she simply took off.
Still, Lily's mother decides to continue looking for Lily all over Miami.
I got in the car and I started looking on the areas that I thought she could possibly be, to the extreme. I was very scared in a way, but I knew I had to do that, so I did. And I ended up being in the worst places ever, like horrible crack houses.
For weeks, Lucely maintains the hope that she will find Lily alive.
Every time I went there, I thought, oh, the next 5 minutes, I'm gonna find her.
Meanwhile, the police conduct searches of the area surrounding the condo. But they find nothing. And then, Lily's mother gets a surprise call from Christian. 2 of his friends have seen Lily.
Christian told me that this person had called him and told him that he had seen Lily in downtown Miami.
Lucely immediately calls one of the men to confirm the sighting.
And I said, are you sure? Tell me exactly, where did you see her? Did you talk to her? What was she wearing? And he just assured me that it was her, that he talked to her, that it was real.
With fresh hope that her daughter is alive somewhere in Miami, Lucely and Janet renew their search. Coming up, suspicions grow about the very person who reported Lily missing.
His behavior was very strange, and he would not look at us. It sticks out a lot because he did not act like a concerned boyfriend or fiancé.
Rose's mother and her friend Janet Forte have been searching all over Miami for Lily ever since she disappeared on June 1st, 2007. And now that 2 of her friends have supposedly seen Lily downtown, they intensify their search.
Her mom and I went out looking for Lily. We went all over town, up and down, over town, Coconut Grove, Kendall. Everywhere and anywhere we thought that we might hear something or find her.
I thought I was gonna find my daughter like in the next corner. And I did that for about 3-4 months. I thought I was gonna see her coming home. Every phone call, I thought it was her.
But they find no sign of Lily anywhere.
I think I started feeling as if something was really wrong after about 2 months. Before then, I was hoping, I was just praying to God that she was somewhere and she'd turn up. But the fact that so much time had passed and she had not made a phone call was very, very strange, especially for a new mother. I mean, she loved her son so much. I just could not see her walking away from him.
And as Lucely and Janet think back over the events surrounding Lily's disappearance, they begin to wonder about one of the last people to have seen Lily. Her fiancé, Christian Pacheco.
I started having this feeling that was something odd.
For one, Lucely wonders why Christian waited an entire day before filing a missing persons report.
I called the police earlier, but they said you can't file a missing persons report for 24 to 48 hours unless it's a minor. Should I file the report Sunday morning? Maybe. I don't know, but I wasn't thinking about that. I was worried about where she was. I wanted to find her.
Lucelli also wonders why Christian never called her before he called the police to see if she had heard from Lily.
At one point, I thought Kelly had talked to Lily's mom, or somebody talked to Lily's mom.
And when Janet thinks back about Christian's behavior when they met a few days after Lily disappeared, she becomes even more suspicious.
His behavior was very strange, and he would not look at us. He would be talking, but he was cleaning his house at the time. It sticks out a lot because he did not act like a concerned boyfriend or fiancé.
Janet and Lucelli begin to think Christian may know more than he is saying. Although he says his behavior at the time was the result of his emotional anguish.
I was spiraling to such depression, and I was going to Overtown buying 20 bags of dope a day, trying to basically overdose. I just wanted to dull the pain of her being gone. I was feeling abandoned.
Still, Lily's mother and her friend Janet Forte make their suspicions known to the Miami-Dade Police Department. In the meantime, all Janet and Lucelli can do is continue their search.
We never stopped. Every moment that we had to search for her, we did. And always hoping that there was a lead out there, a tip out there, that someone had seen her, that we can get information. But that never happened.
More than a year has gone by since Lily Aramburu first went missing. And both Janet and Lucelli feel that not enough is being done to find her.
Because of my frustration with police, frustration with the media, I decided I had to do something. I couldn't just sit by and just wait for her to come back. I had to find out, what I can actively do to help.
Janet launches a social media campaign to spread the word about Lily's disappearance.
I started the blog, and after that, I started doing Twitter and Facebook for her.
And then, in September of 2008, Janet's hard work pays off.
Finally, someone was kind enough to write an article on our local paper, the Miami New Times.
That's when private investigators Joe Carrillo and Anna Lanuza read about the case and decide to offer their services pro bono. Finally, Lily's disappearance is attracting some attention.
We took on the case because Lily Aramburu is a mother and somebody's daughter, and she's lost and she needs to be found. It was my opinion, just from reading the article, that the police department probably was not doing all that they could.
At the same time, the article seems to provoke some renewed interest from police, specifically in Christian Pacheco.
The police just jumped into action, and they picked up Christian soon after, and they took him in to take the polygraph.
But when the results come in, Janet and Lucelli's suspicions seem to be put to rest.
And from what the detective told us was that Christian passed it. He passed the polygraph.
If you pass a polygraph, that goes pretty far in eliminating you from being a person of interest with us or law enforcement. So that took our focus away from Christian.
But in order to get a clearer idea of the sequence of events on the night Lily disappeared, Joe Carrillo and Anna Lanuza decide to meet with the last known people to have seen Lily: Kelly, EJ, and Christian. According to Carrillo, Kelly tells them all about the events of that night, including the argument between Lily and Christian.
And we also asked her where else Lily may have gone, because the article said that she just walked out and left. And there was only one other place that Kelly knew of, and that was a home in Coconut Grove that was a crack house.
It was a place we'd stopped over earlier that day.
According to Christian, the house was home to an array of unsavory activities.
Guys pimping out their girlfriends or forcing their girlfriends to have intercourse with people for drugs. Standard crack house. The floors were tore up, the walls were tore up. There was no toilet, there was no running water, there was no refrigerator, there's no electricity.
Joe Carrillo and Anna Lanuza find out that one of the men who hangs out at the house has an extensive criminal record that includes second-degree murder. And they begin to wonder if Lily went to the house in Coconut Grove and became the victim of foul play.
I really felt that that's what could have happened, that she went over there and something happened.
It's hard to speculate what may have happened in that house. All I know as an investigator is that she had frequented the house before, and there is a person in that house that has killed somebody before.
Coming up, a stunning revelation in the case documents leads investigators to a new suspect.
I didn't fall out of my chair because I think it was a big chair.
Private investigators Joe Carrillo and Anna Lanuza have stumbled on a new lead in the mysterious disappearance of 23-year-old Lily Aramburo. They think that Lily may have walked or hitchhiked to a rundown crack house in Coconut Grove.
In the heat of our little argument, when I was trying to get Kelly out of the room and she had left, you know, I thought, yeah, maybe she had hitchhiked over there.
The private investigators begin looking into everyone connected to the house.
So how do we get to what happened there? I tried to talk to the individual who ran that house.
After numerous attempts, Joe finally reaches the man on the phone.
Then I said, listen, I think some girl may have died in that house. I says, I'm not a cop. I won't even work with the cops if you'll trust me, but I need to find this girl.
The owner doesn't give Joe much information, but Joe learns from another source that the man who had served time for second-degree murder is currently out on bond on an open cocaine charge. The timing would be perfect to pick him up for questioning, but Joe doesn't have the authority.
What I want to do is build a case and hand it over to the detectives who can do something to this guy. We're limited in what we can do. We were basically out there gathering facts to pass it on to law enforcement so they could do what they do.
But after briefly investigating the crack house, the police take no further action. Soon, with all the leads running out and a police force that cannot commit the necessary resources to the investigation, the case goes cold. Two years have gone by with no new leads. Lily's son, Paulden, is now 3 years old. And to mark Lily's 26th birthday, Lily's mother and Janet Forte decide to take a drastic step to raise awareness.
We thought it would be a good idea to have a hunger strike. We felt it was extreme, but for us it was the only thing that would get the attention, that we were looking for.
Janet and I just sat down in downtown Miami for a whole week in a hunger strike, trying to get attention because at the time we were really frustrated that nobody would pick up the story and nobody knew that Lily was missing. We were very frustrated with the police. They never really did much, and they weren't sharing anything, any information of the little bit of work that they were doing. So we were in limbo, really.
Así es que tal, muy buenas noches. Una madre desesperada que ha logrado...
Several local Spanish media outlets cover the hunger strike. But sadly, the renewed attention to the case doesn't bring in any fresh information.
So I think the whole Miami knew that Lily was missing, but we never got a lead.
Still, by December of 2010, their efforts may be finding some traction. Miami-Dade homicide detective Ray Hoadley hears about the case from a colleague and volunteers to take it on himself.
I made a decision and asked the
people that I work for in the Homicide Bureau if we could take a look at the case and review it. And they agreed to let me do that.
And from, the moment I met him, I knew that, things were gonna get better for the investigation. And it was the first time in 3 years that I felt, positive, and he changed my whole view of the police department, this man.
Detective Hoadley begins his investigation by going through all of the existing case files.
It seemed like there was a lot of information in the file, but a lot of the information hadn't been verified.
It also seems to Detective Hoadley that the story in the initial police report doesn't quite make sense.
It just seemed very unusual that a female would walk out of an apartment at 2 o'clock in the morning wearing only a nightgown, without any money, without any credit cards, without a phone, when all that was available to her at the apartment she left from.
And as Detective Hoadley sifts through the case files, he comes upon a document relating to Lily's fiancé, Christian Pacheco, that could dramatically redirect the rest of the investigation. It's the polygraph test, administered to Christian in 2008.
We found the polygraph report in the case file which showed that he had not passed it. There was deception noted to the question, do you know what happened to Lily? During my initial briefing with missing persons, I was told that he had, in fact, passed a polygraph.
Joe Carrillo, Janet, and Lucelli had also been told that Christian passed the test, with no deception indicated.
And I didn't fall out of my chair because I think it was a big chair, and I said, what? He said, Christian failed his polygraph. I said, the one they gave him in 08? And he says, yes.
It appears that somehow the results had initially been miscommunicated to everybody. And suddenly, the focus of the investigation shifts dramatically.
So after that was when the investigation was turned towards Christian.
But before Detective Hoadley meets with Christian himself, he needs to essentially start from scratch.
So we started at the very beginning and tried to redo the entire investigation.
Now, Lily's mother and her friend Janet Forte have newfound hope that Paulden may someday find out what happened to his mother. Coming up, suspicions grow, and Lily's mother becomes even more desperate for answers.
Somebody knows something, somebody saw something, and I need to know where my daughter is, dead or alive.
More than 3 years since Lily Aramburo disappeared, and now homicide detective Ray Hoadley has taken over the investigation. He begins by looking into each possible scenario to see what he can rule out. First, he returns to Lily's last known whereabouts, Christian Pacheco's condo, to be sure that Lily's body is nowhere in the vicinity.
So we came back and searched that property. We had canine come out. We had cadaver dogs that were used.
He went out on Christmas week. I'll never forget. They went diving into the canal behind the apartment. They cut down huge amount of weeds looking for Lily.
And we used aviation to photograph the area and document what we were doing.
But investigators don't find any evidence of Lily. Next, Detective Hoadley takes a closer look at the early sightings of Lily that were reported a few weeks after she disappeared.
The persons supposedly that had seen Lily had never been interviewed, so I said, well, we need to establish if she's been seen after her disappearance. It makes it an entirely different investigation than if she was never seen afterwards.
Detective Hoadley tracks down the two friends, Elvis and Dario, who had supposedly seen Lily back in 2007.
We located Dario, who was still living in the Miami area, and spoke to him about it. And he said absolutely positively he had never seen her.
When Hoadley reaches Elvis and asks him if he'd seen Lily, he too says he did not. But his story is even more interesting.
Christian told him that if he would tell Lucelli that he had seen Lily downtown or seen and spoken to her, it would make Lucelli feel better and wouldn't be worrying about Lily as much. And finally, Elvis agreed to do that because Christian was paying for his drugs.
They were lying. They never saw her.
Hoadley thinks that Christian may have fabricated the sightings to cover up his own involvement in Lily's disappearance. Christian, however, vehemently rejects this line of thought.
I told nobody to say they saw Lily because if you saw Lily, I wanted you to come to with your own merit and it to be a true, factual thing. And for reasons beyond my comprehension, he had said that I told him to say that he'd seen Lily, and there's no way that is possible.
It's still unclear what did happen to Lily. For one thing, Hoadley doubts she's been out wandering the streets without contacting anybody.
She would never have spent that amount of time away from her son without contacting her family. It just wasn't the way she was. Whatever her faults were, she cared deeply for her son and was very close to her mom.
I hate to say it, but if she was alive, she would have called. She would have found a way.
Detective Hoadley also looks into the crack house one more time as a possible site of foul play.
There's no evidence of any sort that Lily went to that house that night. There were some people that lived in that house that had prior criminal records, but there was nothing linking Lily to those people or to that house.
Now, with the sightings of Lily discounted and a murder at the crack house improbable, it appears more likely to Hoadley that something happened to Lily at Christian's condo. So he decides to sit down with the one person who might have some answers, Christian Pacheco.
I said, Christian, that doesn't make any sense that she would walk out and take a bungee cord and not take her phone, not take her money, not take her identification, not wearing any shoes, but she would remember to take a bungee cord. And he said, I thought she was going to kill herself.
And then, Christian's story about Lily's attempt to hang herself in his closet changed.
At one point, he says it was a tie, and another point, he says it was a bungee cord, because he can't remember which to say.
Hoadley suspects that Christian may have made up the suicide story in order to mislead investigators. He convinces Christian to take another polygraph test, and the results, he says, speak for themselves.
He failed it. It showed deception in knowing what happened to her.
Hoadley says, I don't know, he said, I failed this other one. I don't know. I don't see how it's like, it's the nerves, nervousness or whatever it could be with this whole situation just, eats at me. And do I have guilt? Yes, I have guilt on that I didn't give her that compassion.
In April of 2011, the police search the wooded area near the condo again. But they find nothing, leaving Lily's mother desperate for answers.
Somebody knows something, somebody saw something, and I need to know where my daughter is, dead or alive. I need to find out what happened to her. She's my daughter, my only daughter.
Detective Hoadley has since retired from the Miami-Dade police, but his suspicions remain intact.
And I think sooner or later, the truth will come out. I believe she died that night. I don't know how she died. I don't think we've been told the truth.
Proof is that he failed the polygraph. Proof to me is that he was always avoiding me. Proof is that if he was about to marry my daughter, he would just make a phone call and ask me in 4 years, how are you? How is Spalding? Do you know anything about Lily? I never got that. So to me, that's screaming guilt. He's hiding something.
Despite the accusations swirling around him, Christian Pacheco maintains his innocence.
If I had something to do with her disappearance, why would I force the police to take a missing persons report when I could have let that go as long as I wanted to, right? I had nothing to do with Lily's disappearance. There is nothing that I knew more than her leaving my apartment. And there's nothing I know There's nobody I've spoken with, there's nobody that I've talked to that has any idea, along with myself, about what happened to Lily that night after she left.
All Lily's mother and her friend Janet Forte can do is try to move on with their lives.
We need to find her. Her family needs some sort of resolution. I can't imagine her son growing up not knowing what happened to his mother and thinking that she abandoned him or something like that.
I kept moving forward because I have a tremendous gift, a tremendous blessing, which is Lily's son, which